Recording in progress. You might have a little window that pops up. So welcome everyone to this webinar on self-care or demystifying self-care. How many of you on the call have a self-care routine already? Anyone? Yeah, one. No, you're like, if I did, I might not have signed on to the call, or at least a successful one. Yeah, there's Jim with a hand up. Wonderful. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Molly Kaufman. I am a practitioner of traditional Chinese medicine. I'm also a yoga instructor. I worked in integrative medicine for many years while living in the US in Chicago. And then I made my way overseas to Italy, where I've been based for the last 8 years, leading and creating yoga and wellness retreats all over the world and yoga teacher trainings. The through line for me in my very diversified life is, of course, well-being and finding all of the really beautiful, simple, and meaningful ways for us to connect with a sense of well-being and to enhance our quality of life and also to return to nature. I'm going to leave it at that because I know a lot of you on the call already know me. And this is really about you, not me. So if you don't know me and you're curious, we can connect afterwards. But here we are talking about self-care. And let me share my screen. So I'm getting there on the technology, but I still have interesting challenges. So as I'm sharing my screen here, I know that I won't be able to see the chat. So we're going to try to go about 50 minutes today on the topic. And if questions come up, either feel free to type them into the chat, or we'll leave some time at the end of the webinar so that we can have a bit of time for sharing and questions and answers as well. So here we are to demystify self-care and also talk a bit about essential oils, one of the tools that I have found to be an incredible intervention in accountability and also helping me to create a really strong and consistent self-care routine. And I don't know about you guys, but self-care is one of those phrases out in the world and you think, oh, self-care. Well, yeah, of course, to take care of yourself. I know what that means, but it's a really hot topic because for a lot of reasons, actually, we are not doing the greatest job taking care of ourselves. And so for me, when I talk about a topic or when I consider a topic, I really like to consider the whys behind it. And why would we even have to title self-care? Well, of course, society teaches us that productivity equals success and happiness, and that leads us into this cycle of burning the candle at both ends. Anyone on the call has ever succumbed to that part of the experience? You can raise hands or, twinkle your fingers. Danielle, raise your feet too. I know that, yeah, you can just raise everything. We're also really bombarded with messages that we're not enough. And this comes a lot from the, I think, commercialization of healthcare. If you really pay attention to things that are advertised to you for your well-being, most of the time they're carrying a subtle message that you're missing something, or that even like you as an individual are missing something. And this is a bit tricky for our psychological well-being. It's a little bit tricky also for our physical well-being on all levels. But one of the reasons that, of course, then we end up talking about self-care. And I just want to mention on this second point that I believe social media is also sort of a low grade contributor to this feeling we're not enough. Because if you think about it, and no matter how well adjusted you are and how happy you might be in your life, even for me, when I find myself in those moments scrolling through social media, it's inevitable that there are so many images and suggestions that are like, oh, I wish I was that. Oh, so constant input that we're digesting, that perhaps what we have isn't enough or who we are isn't enough. We have so many external demands. I suppose it's all part of the same thing, but demands, expectations that we're often rising to and then neglecting what is really foundational to our well-being or our health or our quality of life. And then, of course, we are sold so many things that say they are meant to enhance our lives, but actually tend to make us sicker. So the good news is that whatever your relationship, I'm not sure if you're seeing that window too, whatever your relationship to self-care is, I'm not going to read through all of this. You'll get this in a PDF, but the suggestion here is that it's clinically proven that if you take time to take care of yourself more or less, everything gets better, from physical to psychological to mental to spiritual. And how many of you on this call right now would enjoy having some even small enhancement of any of these areas? Anyone? I will. I think my life is pretty healthy, but I also really am constantly looking for different ways to continue being healthy, continue creating a nice scaffolding through which to work. So when we get into the subject of self-care, you often see sort of 5 major categories that we're considering about life. The first is physical, and these are just questions that I made up as I was considering this topic and considering how we might engage with it. So the physical level might just be you asking yourself, how are you? How are you? How is your vessel? How are you feeling in your own skin? The emotional level, how are you reacting or responding to life, right? Our emotions are simply our response to any given situation. On the social level, how are you interacting with life? So taking that, maybe comfort in your own skin, how we respond on a very personal level, and then how we take that and begin to interact with life at large. And then, of course, the spiritual level, another very charged word in our modern life. It can mean so many things. So whatever it means to you right now is perfect. But are you connecting with something that is greater than you? And by greater than you, I simply mean, is there some sense that you're a piece of a whole? When we're looking at the topic of self-care, I always think that, and we're going to take a second to actually do a little meditation together in a second to really start our journey together. But these are pretty wonderful questions to kind of keep in your back pocket, because I don't know about you, but there are definitely times when I reflect on my journey where I feel that something's wrong, but I don't know what it is. Anyone relate to moments like that where you're like, something's off, or I should be doing more, but where do I even start? What does it mean? And where am I? And so I created these 4 questions to just start getting us oriented, and maybe as points of reference as you continue through your process, to even just get yourself in the right category to begin asking better questions and to begin listening with a little bit more specificity to your experience. So I love this meme that I found. The school nurse, just put a Band-Aid on it and you'll be fine. You can also give me twinkle fingers if you've ever felt like this poor guy with arrows and swords in every possible place, right? But just put a Band-Aid on it. It's okay. So this is our modern approach to not only self-care, but really all types of care. And I like to always keep a good sense of humor in topics like this because it is a serious topic. Your well-being is a serious topic and it's really important. And yet, if we lose our sense of humor as we are navigating our investigations, it gets a little bit tricky. We kind of fall into the pit of despair rather than staying in the world of inquiry. So, I'd prefer that we don't just put a band-aid on it. I'd prefer that we begin to find the more holistic ways to listen and interact and drop in. And okay, maybe you're going to put a band-aid on to stop the bleeding while you investigate, but what I would really love, if nothing else from the call today, is just start to orient your mind and your consideration around all the band-aids in the world might stop the bleeding, but if we don't ever inquire as to where the wounds came from or what direction the arrows were coming at us from, we might not ever feel good. And here we can kind of jokingly get into, and this really is meant to be a jest, but there's a lot going around related to self-care, right? Like, oh, just go ahead and have that extra chocolate chip cookie, you deserve it. Anyone has ever heard messages like this or related that to self-care, right? So, okay, I'm not saying that you can't have the extra chocolate chip cookie, but it's probably not going to solve the reason that you might feel maladjusted in the first place. So hopefully today we're going to take a little bit deeper dive into some of the foundational ideas and some of the ways that we might be able to start building a self-care routine, or at least even one action that will guide us in the direction of feeling better and feeling more whole. And of course, the really important part of this is that one size does not fit all. And that is a little bit of a challenge in a consumerism world, is that everyone's trying to sell you the right idea. Everyone's got the right answer for you. And when you're in a moment of stress, or when you're in a moment of, let's say, depletion, do you feel ready to just jump on whatever seems to be the right answer that someone's got for you? Anyone out there? You know that feeling when you've kind of accumulated stress, or maybe you haven't been sleeping well, and you get to that place where you have, instead of having had a scaffolding of self-care that you can rely upon in those more challenging moments, you're in that moment where, and this is really reflective of our society of immediacy, isn't it, as well, that it's like the next ad that says, you know, if you do this, you're going to feel better. And you're like, great, I'm just going to do it because I feel pretty awful. Can anyone relate to those moments, even on a very subtle level, or at least having had that thought process? Yeah, a couple ways. I think that we've all had lives a little bit peppered with moments like that. So of course, what we're trying to do is step away from the emergency interventions and really create foundational practices that help us to feel the best possible, and then also give us the scaffolding to rely upon when we do come into the more challenging moments. And so what we want to do today is perhaps see if we can begin to identify a little bit more clearly what the limiting factors are for our overall well-being. And with that said, I'd like to invite Becky's voice into the mix here to take us on a little meditative journey to drop us into the rest of the experience. Becky?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming today. So we're just going to do a mini meditation. So wherever you are, just find a comfortable place to sit. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so just sit with your legs crossed, just a relaxed yet upright posture. So your hands can be on your knees or in your lap, and gently roll back your shoulders. And we're just going to begin to gently close our eyes and slowly tune into the breath. And start to feel into the body. And just notice where you feel the breath most strongly. And focus your attention here. Notice how your body sinks deeper and deeper into relaxation as you focus on the breath. Allowing yourself to become more aware that your feet are safely planted on the floor. You begin to feel this sense of grounding in the body. And as you continue to keep your eyes closed, we're going to just begin today by listening to how our body feels. So scan for any areas that are holding on to something. Tuning into any sensations or any heaviness or tension in the body, or even pain. And just really taking this next few minutes to just tune into what the body is telling you. When we stop to listen, it gives us signals. Just ignoring any of the outside noises or sounds around you. And now begin to tune into what the body needs. So maybe it's being cozy inside with friends or family, enjoying some quiet time with a book or a warm bath, or maybe some extra sleep. Just take the next few moments to just ask your body what it needs. You can say to yourself, what do I need in this moment? You may also feel that you need to slow down or gain clarity of a certain goal. Whatever that is, just feel into this need. Listen to what your body is telling you. Now we'll take this one step further and begin to think about self-care at the deeper level. And self-care goes beyond the occasional massage or relaxing bath. This takes a consistent commitment and expands your routine of caring for yourself to nourish all levels of your being. So we can think about the physical body, our emotional well-being, our social life, and our spiritual beliefs. And as we think about these four aspects, to really tune into what area you need to focus on, maybe for the next month or so. And just taking this time to set an intention for the next month. It can be big or small. And just taking the time to ask yourself in what area of self-care you want to focus on. And we can phrase this in the present moment. So some examples might be, I'm taking the time to slow down where I'm taking the time to set boundaries, where I'm taking the time to listen to what my body needs. And just take the next moment to set your intention. And we'll just take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And let's do that 2 more times to release this practice. In through the nose and out through the mouth. And last time, in through the nose and out through the mouth. And gently begin to come back to the body, back to the room, beginning to wiggle your fingers and toes. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Becky. For those of you on the call, when was the last time you just took a deep breath and gave yourself time to actually listen to what you truly need? So simple, right? So profound, even though it's so simple. So thank you for that beautiful offering. I don't know about you guys, but I feel now as if I'm made of velvet. So let's see how the rest of this webinar goes. So here you have a continuation of that thought process. And that is that when we think about self-care, knowing that one size does not fit all, it's really a beautiful gift to take a moment and consider where an intervention is needed. And as Becky was alluding to in the meditation, self-care can look so many different ways. It can look like giving yourself 3 deep breaths every morning. It can look like cleaning your house. I know that might sound funny, but clean home, clear mind, right? So I know at least one of you out there understands that one as far as self-care, right? Just tidy up, and all of a sudden there's so much more room for other things. The next piece of the puzzle then would be to choose an action. And we often use the word intention, especially in meditative and yogic practices, but there's another phrase that we use in yoga called a sankalpa, which is helping us to take an intention, which is something that we usually intend to do, and making it an affirmation, something that is already true. So already starting to recircuit the habitual patterns of the mind to be an affirmation of what we might choose as an action for self-care. And then also, as we heard in the meditation, it does take about 40 days for something to become a habit. So it takes us a little bit of effort in the beginning, but if you can find ways to stick with even one simple action as incorporated into your life, excuse me for jumbling those words, and you can really make it happen every day, it will become a positive habit in your life and part of the scaffolding, the foundation that we're talking about, rather than always feeling like you need to reach for Band-Aids. And we're going to come back to this idea. But if you happened to have anything come to you really clearly in the meditation, you might want to just jot it down so that you can remember at least where you're entering into the conversation. So before we begin to talk about possible interventions, let's talk a little bit about common misconceptions. The first one, of course, is I don't have time. How many people feel time stressed on the call? Anyone? Time management. Yeah, a lot of us, some of us know. But I really want to encourage us as a community, as a call, and also as a consideration pod of people this evening or this morning, wherever we might find you, to move away from the New Year's resolution mindset. Again, we want to kind of reset the way that we might think about self-care to we are creating some foundational practices that will really support us in the long term, in the long run. So 10 minutes a day is all you need. Actually, 5 minutes, that meditation was 5 minutes long. How many people felt a shift in your energy, in your perspective, in your breath, even your outlook just in that 5 minutes? Anyone? Felt some simple shift? It can be that simple, right? Giving yourself 5 minutes a day. And I know that everyone can set their alarm 5 minutes earlier in the morning and create that space. So it doesn't have to be big. I don't deserve it. So here we start getting into some different limiting thoughts. This call is not really meant to be a therapy session, nor is it the right venue for us to really dive into this individually. So I'm just going to leave you with this thought. You're not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. It's one of my favorite quotes and something that I often have to remind myself of as a caregiver. You are an integral part of life. And as such, your wellness is also an integral part of life. We can do more of that on another call. I need to be better is also something that I believe comes up really often for people. So I just want to tell you that self-care is not about being better, having more, any of those types of thoughts. Self-care is returning you to you. Again, getting to the foundation, to the honesty, really listening in and making some choices, adding some practices that are going to return you to feeling as the whole being that you already are. So you don't need to be better. Maybe you can do actions better or make choices better, but you yourself are the subject in self-care. You are perfect and whole as you are. And we just need to find the ways to return us to the ways that we can keep watering the beautiful jungle that each of us is. I forget. And so, yes, all of us forget. Again, it takes about 40 days to create new habits. So one of the topics on this call is introducing you to some essential oils. Again, one of my favorite topics because I find them really incredible tools for accountability when we're trying to change daily habits and specifically self-care because they are nature's medicine and really beautiful. But again, the goal here is to create something, to be able to create a scaffolding, a foundation that is always in place throughout our lives or throughout our day, so that we're not necessarily always feeling like self-care is some emergent interaction or intervention that we have to find. Because again, when you're in that stressful moment, when you're at the end of your rope, it isn't exactly the best time to try to listen to what you might need because the whole body is in fight or flight and really difficult to hear with honesty. So just really quickly, I always like to distinguish sort of these three levels of approaches. Of course, a state of dis-ease is always a relationship. So whether it's a relationship to ourselves or then how this capsule and entity, soul, mind, body, spirit is also relating to the external forces. Usually when we feel we need an intervention, it starts as something therapeutic, meaning it's medicinal in nature. And again, saying no can be medicine. Cleaning your house can be medicine. So I don't mean necessarily medicine, but in the beginning, we are sort of in the therapeutic realm where we are trying to bring harmony back to a situation that has lost it. Once we bring back the harmony, we're in the maintenance phase. So we're just doing our best to stay consistent enough to maintain the harmonious status that we've created. And then eventually, if we make it there, it becomes simply part of our life and our habitual way of being. And so that's sort of the trajectory when we start talking about self-care and perhaps taking steps, is that yes, each one starts as therapeutic, but we want to find the consistency to make it to maintenance, and the consistency to make it to the point where these things are just a natural part of the way that we're engaging in life. So, why essential oils? I think I've sort of alluded to it in a lot of different ways. Accountability is a huge one, and I will tell you why throughout the rest of the information. Intermediate, immediate intervention. So, again, just tackling that mindset of like, go, 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 go. Oh no, Mayday, Mayday. Okay, now what? But starting perhaps as part of our self care routine to recognize when something is beginning to be a little bit off, and knowing what to reach for or what practice to take on to moderate that in the beginning, probably limiting so many other problems that come from our beautiful ability in our world of immediacy to just ignore things until we really have some sort of war to endeavor within ourselves. The essential oils as nature's plant medicine are a really beautiful metaphor for simplicity, for simplifying, and getting right to the point. And okay, essential oils are also fun. Just really quickly, I am a wellness advocate for doTERRA, an amazing, amazing essential oil company. So the oils that I'll be presenting to you today are from doTERRA. And just the quick whys: doTERRA oils are pure, they're tested, they're sustainably harvested. Education in the company is absolutely fundamental. doTERRA is giving back constantly to their harvesting communities. So doing good by creating something that also helps us to have better lives. And they're constantly also reaching out into the world in the form of service. So, let me see if I can go back. Okay, so as you can imagine, if we're saying that one size does not fit all, then it will be really difficult for me in the next, let me see how I'm doing on time, 25 minutes to talk about any and everything that could have possibly come up for you, either in the meditation or maybe something that you already were curious about and brought with you to the call. So in the next little while, I'm going to present some of the things that we find as commonalities, common roadblocks in the discussion about self-care. And then, of course, if you're new to me or you haven't done, and also perhaps new to Becky, who is a holistic lifestyle coach, a holistic health coach, really beautiful being there, you can also do something a little bit more on an individual basis. So bear with me as we tackle a few of the major subjects and things that we might start thinking about as interventions and structuring a better healthcare, self-care routine. And then if there are lingering questions, we can also tackle those as a community at the end of the call. So physical health, one of my favorite topics, and those of you who have done any kind of yoga study with me know that even in the tradition of Hatha yoga, we start with the body. It's undeniable that we are living in this capsule, no matter what else might be in the spectrum of your beliefs or your spiritualities. We have to deal with this capsule. And if we don't feel good in this vessel, then it's really, really difficult to have anything else be good. And case in point, right? If you have pain, for example, no matter how evolved you might be spiritually or how amazing your outlook on life might be, it's going to be kind of difficult and challenging because you're getting messages from your physical body all of the time. So the first thing that we want to consider when we talk about physical health is movement. And again, all of these topics are really huge topics. So we might be a little at the tip of the iceberg for some of them, but really just hoping to inspire a deeper investigation for you to figure out where the portal is in creating a great self-care routine. So the only thing that I want to say about movement is that it's good. We are full of movement. We are made of energy and vibration, and thereby movement is really wonderful. In our looking at maybe burning the candle at both ends, of course, there are so many things out in the world right now that are asking us to use our bodies in ways that are depleting, meaning, like all the incredible power yoga classes and going to the gym and running around. So there is that element, but a lot of times we actually feel deficient in energy because we have tried to digest too much, or because our emotional state is a little bit out of balance, and all of that gets distributed in our physical experience. And so sometimes, and this is again just for you to consider, at the end of a long day you might feel like, I know that I should move, but I really don't have the energy. But it just might be that the energy is stuck in all the little corners that you've had to sort of distribute it in to keep going through your day. And a little bit of gentle movement could be the exact right medicine for your self-care routine to reintegrate the forces of your body. Digestion is a big one here when we talk about physical health. And if you have seen any of my presentations on digestion, it goes well beyond, of course, how we're nourishing ourselves, but we are having to digest literally everything that we come in contact with during a day. And so if you're feeling overwhelmed already by all of the things that you're tackling in a day, it might be taking its toll on your digestion as all of that information gets distributed into the physical body. Breathing properly. How many people feel like maybe toward the end of the day you're running the race of life and we've lost our breath, or you're dealing with a lot of emotional things, and the first way we protect ourselves is to hold our breath. So even just paying attention to breathing deep can be an incredible enhancement of a self-care routine, and then pain as well, as I've already mentioned. So the first oil that I'd like to talk about is Breathe. In Europe, and I think in Canada, it's called Air. This is an amazing essential oil blend. It is a blend of some different essential oils, but as its name alludes to, it is my favorite for simply remembering to breathe. It opens the airways, it opens the heart. And one of the ways that you could consider using an oil like Breathe, again, as we sort of look at maybe these oils as little friendly reminders in the direction of what habits we're wanting to create. So the Breathe oil is an amazing one, I think, to have on your bedside table. This is one that I happen to use every single day in my yoga practice. I have a self practice. I am doing that, very dedicated to doing that every day. And I use the Breathe oil before I practice. However, if we're talking simplicity and maybe even just incorporating one positive action into your day, what if you woke up and the first thing that your eyes saw was your little bottle of Breathe? You put a few drops in your hands, rub together, and take the time to take 5 deep breaths to start your day. How might that affect the rest of your day in a positive way? And then maybe even repeating before you go to bed. This slide, so I'm kind of giggling every time I went to review this little webinar and I got to this slide and I was like, that's not like so inviting, but it actually is. So those of you who know me know that I'm not the hugest advocate of supplementation, but this is doTERRA's probiotic and doTERRA's enzyme. I am an avid believer in this type of intervention if you are one who is experiencing that life is taking its toll on your ability to digest things. And I'm not going to take too long to go into exactly what these two supplements are, but probiotics is just replenishing your gut with the microbes that it needs to do its job well and to stay healthy and to stay intact. And enzymes are lowering the activation energy of pretty much everything that your body does. And inevitably in our modern world, it is something that we are having to contemplate and something that we're having to confront, that our diet isn't as rich in nutrients as it used to be. We are burning the candle at both ends, and we are having to digest an incredible amount of stuff. And so it could be that your first effort in establishing a self-care routine is a little bit of supplementation for perhaps a finite amount of time, just to give your body the foundational elements it needs to process life. Like, it might be that simple to start. Imagine if you give yourself a little bit of help to make your digestive process healthier, how that would enable you to approach any other self-care topic in a much better and capable way. Handling pain, as I mentioned on that first slide, is something that I am finding across the board with my clients, with my students, is something so important. Definitely in our really fast world, we're feeling a lot of pain, all of us. And as I said, pain, no matter what the origin, is getting distributed into the physical body, and little by little, left unhandled, starts to create a lot of discomfort and eventually could even create some very serious diseases. So how many of you on the call have ever felt like pain of any sort and you're like, oh, it's not that bad, and you just keep going? Anyone? Everyone, probably everyone. Yeah. Even if you think about it in the simplest terms, and then what happens, right? That pain lingers, you continue on, and then that becomes a vulnerable spot. And the next challenge you face, whatever that might be, emotional, physical, whatever, is going to hone right into that vulnerable spot and make that pain worse. And then at a certain point, you're not even going to be able to determine where the pain originated from, because it's composted into some beast that you're just learning how to live with. Like, oh yeah, it's my neck. I know. So essential oils can, as I mentioned in the beginning, right, when we talk about getting a little bit more immediate in our interventions, so it is a little bit of a road to begin to recognize when things begin to happen. But I really believe that the essential oils are an incredible guide toward getting us back to this place. And here you see the deep blue oil. It's another doTERRA blend, really, really wonderful for muscle pain and inflammation. And as you can see here, right, emotional pain can distribute itself in the body. So what you could do with things like this, and it's really cool. doTERRA has made this kind of blend super easy to be user friendly. So it comes in a rub, it comes in an oil, it comes in a roller stick, and they actually made, it's not in this photo, they just made like an actual stick to avoid any of the messiness. But what if the next time you felt any sensation of pain, you just had something to reach for and you put it on? And in this way, not only are you cultivating the ability to recognize something when it begins to happen, but you also might start to change your relationship to the pain, right? Not something that you have to live with, or not something that, is mysterious and whatever, and I just have to like ignore it. But what if you were kind to something on you that hurt? And in doing that, and in beginning to recognize when that process is beginning, you begin to hear the messages that are the foundational messages, that are the real messages of your body a little bit better. So hopefully you're starting to see why I'm mentioning some of these interventions. So yes, it is a little bit about the oils, but hopefully you're starting to clue into, right, some of these ideas too about self-care that will really facilitate an easier time for us. So sleep is another huge topic, right? And I put emotional health here because definitely if we're at that emotional well-being level and we have a lot going on, that can really, really affect our sleep. But just like one of those first slides, I'm not going to read all of this, but guys, when you sleep well, everything in your body works so much better. And I know everyone knows, because I feel pretty certain that as human beings in this day and age, all of us have had even at least 1 or 2 nights of bad sleep. And I don't know about you, I am a weeper. When I lose sleep or when I get overtired, my emotions go crazy. You definitely don't want to be near me when that happens. It's getting better through my self-care routine. But so I feel it when I'm sleeping well, and when that part of my life is well, we just feel so much better adjusted. And I know that you can relate to that in your own personal ways. So the first thing we want to consider about sleep and self-care is creating a bedtime routine. And I feel like probably you've heard this. And, there is, no matter what type of accountability we have, phone a friend, be part of a community, we start a WhatsApp group after this call, maybe for 30 days and see how we're all doing with our self-care, there still is the element that you have to rise to being dedicated to what you want to do and to just do it. So creating a bedtime ritual in our modern day for sure includes turning off all devices at least an hour before bed. And there are some oils that can help us to create a nighttime routine. That is a huge bottle of lavender. If ever you've smelled doTERRA lavender, you might actually want a bottle that huge, although I don't think they're ever going to make one. So lavender is a really beautiful universal oil and really wonderful oil for supporting sleep patterns. So one of the things that I want to stop and just mention quickly here, if you are newer to essential oils, there are usually 3 ways that we can use the oils: topically, aromatically. So that's usually diffusing, but sometimes it just means having your bottle in your pocket and opening it and taking a whiff when you need, and also internally. All of these 3 ways, I am going to say again, going back to the why doTERRA, it's really super important to know where your oils are coming from and to know what's inside that bottle before you bring it into your self-care routine. And what is important about the aroma therapeutic nature of essential oils is that when we smell an essential oil, it's interacting with the part of our brain that is responsible for our emotions, for our heart rate, for our respiration, for our memory, right? This is why when we smell certain things, all of a sudden we're flooded with memories that we didn't even know we had remembered. So all of it, this to say that when we start talking about something like a nighttime routine or a sleep routine, it seems really simple. Again, getting back to that simplicity type of thing. But if you make yourself a cup of tea an hour before you go to bed and put a drop of lavender in, or as Becky alluded to, even though it is one of the perhaps more like superficial self-care things, it still can be an amazing part of a bedtime routine, is to take a bath and put some lavender in. The minute your nose interacts with the lavender, it is giving a direct message to the body to settle into a more harmonious vibration. And this can be something really helpful if we're talking about entering into a restful sleep in a more harmonious and settled way. And I always like to mention, I think sometimes there's a little bit of a misconception that lavender has like sedating qualities. It isn't really that. It's incredibly harmonizing. It's incredibly balanced. And that's what we want, right? We don't want to sedate ourselves. We don't want to take ourselves out of the experience of life. We just want to find all of the right ways to keep us in that beautiful fluid homeostasis that is the absolute well-being. So lavender is an amazing one to incorporate into a bedtime routine. Serenity is another. Here we have another blend. So we start with lavender there, and going from there, a blend again of some really beautiful oils from cedarwood, which is grounding, to some of the flowers, which are top notes. So kind of integrating a little bit more totally the experience of harmonizing the body before bed. And so here, if we're looking at starting perhaps a like going to sleep routine, um, I have an alarm set at 9 p.m. every night on my phone, and that's when I turn my phone onto airplane mode. There are all sorts of really neat things in the modern world to help us start habits like this. There's also an app called a mindfulness bell. I'm sure there are other ones that I don't know about, right? But what if you just set a little reminder on your phone, 9 p.m. or whatever makes sense in your life, airplane mode goes on so that you can disconnect from all that you're needing to digest. And in that moment, you put a drop of serenity on your wrists, you give a little smell, you put on the back of your neck, and this starts to vibrate with the body and create some sort of feedback mechanism that, oh, okay, now is the time that we begin to settle down. And it can be a really powerful asset to giving the body positive signals that it's okay to let go and okay to get ready for bedtime. And of course, lavender serenity, you can diffuse. The last one that I'm going to mention around sleep, and I'm just going to do a time check for myself. Oh, there's so much to tell you and so much for us to explore. Okay, you guys know me so well, so maybe a little bit on Italian time. So peppermint is the last one I'm going to talk about for sleep. And if you've interacted with peppermint, you're probably going, huh? So sleep, if we're looking from the holistic standpoint, right, is not only about getting ourselves to settle into a good sleep pattern, having restful sleep, but also when you wake up in the morning, opening your eyes, taking that first deep breath and being ready for your day. So peppermint, we could actually incorporate on the back end of a sleep routine. Another one, maybe you keep on your bedside table if you're one of those that hits your snooze button 5 times before you're ready to start your day. And the first thing you might do is put a little peppermint in your hands, do what we call a peppermint bomb, right? A few deep breaths. And this starts also giving biofeedback to your body, like, okay, we rested, we slept, and now it's time to engage in life. So again, just kind of tackling some ideas around some of the topics, and then maybe hopefully a few little light bulbs going off on ways that you could start thinking about creating the routine. So the last one I'm going to talk about for today is stress. And here I put spiritual health because stress is a lot to do with how we are reacting and responding. And often as our spiritual life feels more fulfilling to us, we are finding ways, not only the practices that maybe bring us deeper into our spiritual well-being, but also just that understanding that there is some unification broader than just within ourselves, within life, often gives us the ability to respond to stressors in a much more healthful way. And so here the big topic with stress is that it's never about the thing. We can't eliminate stress from life. It's a natural part of life. But the real stress problem is how we are reacting, or hopefully little by little responding when stressors do present themselves. So this is a place where we are looking at some of the lifestyle habits of yoga, of pranayama, breathing exercises, of all of the different perhaps meditative practices that can help us to find new perspectives, and how the oils can fit in. So adaptive is one of my absolutely favorite blends. I'm going to tell you something. If you haven't heard it from me already, it is sitting next to me during every webinar that I do. I've been teaching for 20 years in some capacity or another, and I still get nervous before I give a presentation like this. If I had had adaptive 20 years ago when this process started of like a fear of public speaking, I probably would be already much better at it. But I put this on my wrists before I give any presentation. And again, the idea here is to find ways to interact with what is real for us in any given moment. And so if perhaps you identify stress as something that is limiting your well-being, what if you had a tool in your pocket that throughout the day, when you found that you were interacting with you reacting to something rather than being able to take a few breaths, evaluate the situation, and then respond from a more soulful or honest place? What if you had a little tool that you're like, okay, so let me take a deep breath, rewire that habitual pattern, and start to create a more healthful relationship to interacting with stressful moments. And adaptive can be an amazing accomplice, case in point, for moments like that. So here we start to look at, can we cultivate ways to respond rather than react? Frankincense is another really wonderful in stress related categories. We call this the king of oils. Frankincense is so broad in its functionality. It's a very ancient medicinal substance. It shows up in medicinal traditions really from all over the world, from probably the beginning of any kind of documentation of medicinal interventions. And it is really working with the body on a cellular level. So frankincense is sometimes one that maybe in a self-care routine we would be incorporating internally. But just for this topic of stress for right now, I will mention that frankincense happens to resonate vibrationally with all of the 7 major chakras in the chakra system. So this is something really special and profound about this particular medicinal substance, meaning that it could be an amazing one to incorporate into your meditative or yoga practice if you have one already in place. And then what can happen is that since our yoga practice and our meditative practices usually make us feel good in the moment, but then we go to interact with life and inevitably we find ourselves in moments where we think that we're going to maybe lose ourselves or lose control. What if you had frankincense in your pocket, and just by smelling, because it's interacting with that portion of your brain that can bring you back to the memory of the experience of your meditative practice, that it hones you back in again and again to navigating life from that space. So frankincense, again, a huge spectrum, also huge anti-inflammatory. So it could have gone into the pain category. It really could have gone into any category, but putting it here to make that point. And the last one I will mention as far as stress is copaiba. Copaiba is a relatively newer essential oil, or at least in the testing process. And it's known for one of its chemical constituents called beta caryophyllene. Guys, do you know how many times I practiced that word? Yeah, so many times. But now, because I'm at the end of the webinar, I'm just going to leave it there on the screen. And the minute we hit end, I'm going to say it perfectly again. So wonderful. I'm a human being too. And this is where sense of humor always comes into play. But the copaiba I put here, similar to frankincense, it's really operating on a fundamental level. So this might also be one that we're using as a supplement. But what is really special about the copaiba, if anyone is a CBD fan, I personally have never had a great relationship with marijuana or any of its derivatives, but I know that for some there can be a significance in this idea of kind of harmonizing the body. Well, what's special about copaiba is that it's interacting directly with the receptors in the body that provide us with that really kind of soft, harmonizing, returning to a fluid state in the nervous system. And this is obviously a big oil, maybe could have its own webinar, but it is a really beautiful one for all things inflammation, and also for helping us to create, or helping to be a piece of accountability in creating constituents of our self-care routines that help us to navigate stress. So I just want to return, as we bring this to a close, to this sort of 3-step process. So hopefully, again, very difficult to talk to the entire spectrum of what each of you might be looking at as far as wanting to engage in self-care routine. But hopefully what you're starting to hear and feel is how to get to the foundational level of what that can be, and maybe using the essential oils as an accomplice to creating something more foundational, more creating the scaffolding of our lives, and also to be consistent enough that we really see the profound benefits of taking care of ourselves. So if you didn't before, and again, you'll get these slides in PDF, taking a moment to identify really where an intervention is needed. And you can return to the experience of Becky's beautiful meditation, right? It could just be as simple as stopping yourself for 3 deep breaths and listening in. Maybe already from today's presentation or the meditation, you feel connected to something. I encourage you to write that down. Then, if you've written that down, choose an action, make an intention into an affirmation, make it something that is already existing in your life, in your reality, and choose one simple action to really bring that to fruition, to really manifest that in each day. And then do your best using either any of the tools that we've mentioned or reaching out for accountability to practice for at least a month. And the great thing is that sometimes what we hear is the perfect step to lead us to knowing that we need something different. And so this is also a friendly reminder that taking the first step can sometimes be, even if we look back and we're like, oh, that wasn't exactly right, it was. Because if you follow through for 30 days, it is going to give you the clarity as to where it really fits into the whole kaleidoscope of your relationship to taking care of yourself. And it might be exactly the piece you needed to identify the next step with deeper honesty. And the last thing that I'm going to leave you with is that wherever you are on the spectrum of relating to self-care, whether something is coming to you, really distinctively now through this information, through this experience of being together today, and you're like, yes, okay, I know my first step, or at least I know who I'm going to ask or reach out to. Or if maybe you're listening to all of this and you're like, hey, you know what? I'm actually doing pretty good. I'm really happy with what I'm doing. Gratitude is always a place that we can go, right? Just finding one thing in each day to be grateful for is an amazing place to start. And this is also an amazing and fundamental place if perhaps you're in the middle of those 2 endpoints that I just talked about, and you're like, well, I know something's wrong, but nothing is really striking me quite yet. Start with gratitude. And there are oils also that can support you in that process. And there are practices there, but just simply start with gratitude and see if that doesn't lead you to more honesty and more clarity. So thank you so much. We're going to bring the call to the close. Thank you so much for coming on with us. Again, a thank you to Becky for offering the beautiful meditation and being part of the process with us today. If you are not already involved in the essential oils, or if you are, the first step, if you haven't already, that you can do if you're interested in perhaps incorporating them into your own personal investigation of how to create a really good self-care routine for yourself, is to reach out to me and schedule a free personalized call. And in this way, I can give you better feedback in an individual way and help guide you in the right direction to creating or having the things that might be really helpful according to your needs. And then you can enroll for a wholesale account with doTERRA. which will give you a 25% discount for a year to be a member, and you'll have access to your own account and can do what you want with the essential oils. And by doing that, you enter into a world where you will have me as your personal essential oils coach, and actually so many more things. And you will also have the support and educational resources of an entire community of people who are on a journey just like us to just return home to us, so that everything else that we're engaging in life is coming from the beautiful place of wholeness that you know you already are, and the beautiful creature that you know you already are, and that perhaps we just all from time to time need a little assistance returning to. The last thing, actually, I want to be mindful of time. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to stop the share. I'm going to bring us back, and I could keep talking, for another 2 hours, but let's open the floor to any questions if there are. And I'm going to pull up the chat and say, oh, Jim was on the chat responding to a lot of stuff. You're amazing. Thank you so much. All right. Anything either in the chat or anything that you'd love for me to hear your voice? I would love to hear your voice. I'm going to scan the chat there. Okay, so great conversation about roller bottles. Wonderful. Oh, thanks, Jen. Thank you. Okay, Jenna had to go. Wonderful. So anything at all, even right down to that was helpful. That was what you thought it would. That gave you new insights. It gave you new inspiration.
Molly.
Yeah.
I thought it was wonderful. And I've never heard of adaptive.
Yeah.
Am I pronouncing it right?
Yeah.
Is that a new oil?
It's not new, but newer. I know that you've been with doTERRA for a long time, so probably right back to your origins. It's new to that spectrum, but it is an amazing oil. It's like minty and uplifting and citrusy and grounding, and it is its name, to adapt. It really is an amazing facilitator to help us be more adaptive in all situations in life.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else for the gang? Jim just posted in the chat Can I hire you, Jim? You just did a lot of work on my behalf while I was talking a lot.
I like to chat during Zooms.
Yeah. Well, and so gang, so Jim is actually the one who got me involved in doTERRA. We're colleagues from integrative medicine in our my former days in Chicago. We sort of like took each other's places in a different, but I just want to point out, because Jim is doing this amazing thing. This is really, for me, indicative of community, right? And of people gathering together for the betterment of everyone. So I've just done a webinar. I couldn't see the chat. Jim was really an amazing support to come on, because he's always wanting to see what I'm doing and to give me feedback, which I really appreciate. And here he is just like supporting in an amazing way. And that's what a healing community should be about. So Jim, thank you. Thank you so much for doing all of that work, but also being representative of what our community really is about.
Yeah, happy to be here. And just to correct, I'm not here to give feedback as much as I'm here to learn from you. So, you always drop such amazing knowledge, and I appreciate your background. And I have sort of a like, I can't even say a love-hate relationship with yoga. It's more like a tolerance to hate sort of spectrum. I did enough yoga to get a yoga teacher to marry me, and then it just sort of stopped. But last night we were doing yoga, and it occurred to me, I was like, it was the first time that yoga felt like really good. And I was like, oh, this should be like I want to do more of this. And so then today in the meditation, it's like, okay, like commit to doing yoga, like on the daily, or let's more realistically, like 5 days a week. for the next month. So I'm really excited to check that out. And that falls right into your wheelhouse for sure.
Yeah, without a doubt. And in January, I'll be offering, I created a 5-week program kind of for this to help people dive a little bit deeper into the practice, but also because as you are so beautifully saying, I feel like a lot of things we come in contact with initially in the beginning, we're like, but then with consistency, all of a sudden the whole world of the goodness of it reveals itself and can create new inspiration. So thank you so much for sharing that story, Jim, and good luck on your journey. I'm excited to share in on it. Great.
I also want to say this has been really helpful. Every time we have these little meetings, it encourages me and reminds me of the tools I already have to reincorporate. So I did that 5-week class with Molly and it was amazing. So now I'm like, okay, I can maybe 2 mornings a week, I can get that yoga in, like start there, and I can maybe build up to more. So yeah, this is really encouraging. Thank you.
Great. Beautiful, Danielle. And that's it. It's one of the things Becky and I were talking about when we were talking about this webinar is like the accountability piece, right? And community can be so helpful for that. So I do an educational webinar once a month. And then for people who are already using the oils and part of that community, I do a continuing education call once a month. And so these little pieces of accountability, however we find them, whether dialing in or, again, just like a texting, reaching out. Most people, if you've worked with me before, I'm always open to just, hey, text me with a question or text me with a struggle so that I can be that accountability, that witness, and just keep you going. But more importantly, Danielle, what you said is like 2 mornings a week is amazing. Great. It, for some people, maybe it's like, oh, if I'm not doing it every day, I'm not succeeding. Forget it. Start in a place that feels comfortable so that you can keep it. And that's it. That's the most amazing place to start or continue.
Totally one of those. Oh, sorry, Molly. I'm totally one of those people. You probably know that because I was like, okay, 5 days a week, I'm going to do it. And then I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. Don't set myself up to fail. What can I do?
Forget the New Year's resolutions. I'm here to tell you, forget it. Don't do it. Don't change everything at once. It doesn't work. It can't work. Just choose one thing. Stick with it and see what it reveals. It will be so magical, really. Cool. Well, I don't know I know probably Becky and I are heading into the dinner hour. Most of you are mid-morning still with maybe coffee or tea. Any last, hey, Becky, thanks for letting me see your face. So great.
My self-care today was to do this while I was at work. So I was doing double things, but at least I was here and I just wanted to say hello and sending love.
Hello, sending love back to you. So great. Another beautiful example of self-care. Cindy is also calling in from work, technically. So amazing, right? What if self-care is just like, you know what? I actually can do this and be together with these people for a little bit of my day. And how beautiful and positive is that choice? So well done, you. Great. Well, listen, everyone, thank you so much for joining today. I will be sending you a link with the recording if you want to refer back to it, the chat, and also the PDF. And I will also include Becky's contacts. So if you are interested to learn more about her or reach out to her for any of the beautiful things that she's doing. And of course, you'll have my contact. So if you'd like to reach out for a personalized consultation, I will be looking forward to connecting with you in a more personal way. And thank you so much for being here and just being part of this. I always sound like a hippie when I say, oh, this beautiful energy, but really, I mean, even through Zoom, I know we're still navigating this kind of funny time. I'd rather reach through the screen and hug each one of you individually, but just take it virtually, and really appreciative that you took the time to show up today. See you next time, everyone. You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.